This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the X-Zone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Worldwide toll-free, 1-800-610-7035. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com or right here to the studio on air at xzoneradiotv.com. Our on all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV, and our main website where you can listen to the X-Zone 724-365 is xzoneradiotv.com. I'm still trying to wrap my head around that last hour I had with Leo Line Zagami. It's very hard for me to wrap my head around the fact that the United States of America created ISIS. You know, and that there's a shadow Vatican. All right, the shadow government I can plausibly understand, New World Order, okay. But to try and wrap my head around the fact that the United States government created ISIS, and that there's so much going on behind the scenes that is contrary to everything that we believe in. All right, conspiracies, cover-ups, they've been around from day one. They really have. In fact, I remember having a good friend of mine, Clyde Lewis, who does another show on the radio called Ground Zero. I said, Clyde, why is everything in the United States a conspiracy? He said, that's because our country was founded on a conspiracy. All right, I can understand that logic, I guess. But I'm going to have to do some serious thinking about it my last hour. Serious thinking, and I'm going to have to play back this show a number of times in order to try and put it into some sequence. But that was last hour. This hour, we're going to be talking to Richard Sauder. He is a native Virginian now living in Ecuador with an abiding interest in Forteana, unusual information and anomalous paradigm-busting data of all varieties. Beginning in early childhood, he has experienced first-hand contact with a variety of paranormal phenomenon that has left him a bit puzzled. Now, I can understand that. And thoroughly persuaded that there is much more to the earth and to human perceptions and consciousness than the mainstream American culture believes. Some of Richard's favorite research and reading interests are underground and underwater bases and tunnels, electronic mind control, freedom technology, UFOs, human prehistory, and remote antiquity, international politics, the Kundalini energy, and alternative thought patterns. He is the gentleman behind the Event Horizon Chronicle. That's eventhorizon.chronicle.blogspot.com. And Richard, welcome to the X-Zone.
Thank you so much, Rob. I'm glad to be with you.
I'm glad you're with us too, Richard. You're a very interesting person. I've read your bio. Our research department has gone online and done their homework. And I must ask you, where does this all fit into what's going on in the world today? You know, the freedom technology, the UFOs, the quest for better understanding.
Well, you know, we live on a planet that has well, we might say we know what reality is, but I'm telling you, and you're evidently the guest in your last segment told you somewhat the same kind of thing in a slightly different way. There are many overlapping, superimposed, interpenetrating levels of reality and dimensions that are operative on this planet. And there are many agents and, what would you say, actors, maybe literally meaning actors, at work in this so-called reality that we're living in. And anyone who believes that they fully understand what's happening on this planet has to be either tremendously ill-informed or just deluded, because it's a truly complex tapestry with many different threads, interpenetrated. Sometimes you see the thread, sometimes you don't. Sometimes it's, it's red, it appears somewhere else, and it's been dyed green. And you look at it, this tremendous, the woof and the wharf of this fabric that we call reality. And the more that you learn, and this is true of me and many others, I believe, the more you understand that you don't know and that you don't understand.
Maybe that's my problem, Richard. I've been doing this show for 24 years, and I've interviewed over 3,800 people. I've heard so many stories, I don't know who to believe anymore.
Well, let me tell you that what your guest, judging from the little synopsis you gave at the top of this hour, what your guest in the last hour said about ISIS is factually true. ISIS is a creation primarily of the United States, the CIA, the Pentagon, with important input from the Israelis and the Mossad, also with a lot of funding from the Saudis, the Qataris, and the Turks. So they're really bad people.
Why? Why would the United States of America create ISIS?
Well, let me tell you, it's really easy to understand.
It is?
The business, oh yes.
Okay.
Let's look at this. The business of the United States is war, more than any other thing. The United States has been at war for something like, it's been in existence for about 235 years. And for something like 215 of those 235 years, the United States has been involved in a war somewhere, and some years it's been involved in multiple wars in multiple countries. So the United States is in fact a very militarily aggressive country, and has been since its inception, notwithstanding that the propaganda is, with respect to the United States, that it is its whole national mission is to advance the cause of peace, freedom, democracy, human liberty, human rights within the United States and abroad. I'm telling you, Rob, and I'm telling you, audience, nothing could be further from the truth. And that has to do with the great mind game, mind job, shall we say, that's being put over on humanity. And part of it is that when there is no war, for a large country like the United States, whose business is war, you see, when there is no war, that's bad for business. So what do you do if there is no war and no one wants to fight? Well, you start a war. Well, how do you do that? If necessary, you create an army out of thin air that didn't previously exist. 5 years ago, no one heard about ISIS. 2 years ago, no one knew diddly squat about ISIS. ISIS popped up like a mushroom out of nowhere in the hot, arid sands of the Middle East, complete with butcher knives for cutting off heads, and etc. And where did it come from? Well, I just told you, it's a joint creation of those who want to see war, those who make a lot of money off of war. By a lot of money, Rob, I mean not millions of dollars, not billions of dollars, but trillions of dollars. Modern warfare on the planet Earth in this day and age is a multi-trillion-dollar global business, and there's no bigger player in the warfare game on this planet in our time than the United States of America. And that is the answer to your question. Now, having created this monster, the CIA, the the Pentagon, Department of Homeland Security, point their fingers and mock horror at the monster that's reared its hydra head out of the sands of the Middle East, and they say, "Look, a monster. We have to protect America against this monster because the monster wants to attack America, and before we know it, why, they'll be coming across the Rio Grande from Mexico with nuclear bombs to attack our blonde-haired and blue-eyed boys and girls, except now with the massive immigration, the boys and girls are more dark-haired and dark-eyed than they were in the past." But that's the public story. The backstory is that the Frankenstein monster has in fact been created by the power structure in the United States, acting with some other countries, notably Israel, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Qatar. And once this monster's been created and given momentum, it has taken on a life of its own. Now, it's interesting that just in the last week or two, Saudi Arabia announced that they are preparing to activate their agreement with Pakistan, which goes back some years, whereby Saudi Arabia, having helped to fund the Pakistani nuclear weapons program, which has produced a fair number of nuclear missiles by this point, the agreement they had from the beginning was, in exchange for Saudi Arabia bankrolling the program, at some future date, Saudi Arabia reserved the right to acquire from Pakistan working nuclear weapons. The Saudis have recently indicated that they are preparing to ask Pakistan for some nuclear weapons. Don't you know that just a week or two after the Saudis said that ISIS began publicly talking through they put out a slick, glossy magazine every month or two. They've got a lot of money from somewhere. And one of the things they do is to put out this ISIS magazine. I know you're saying that's all very cute. But what they have announced is that they may themselves, ISIS, be acquiring from the Pakistanis through back channels some nuclear devices of their own. Now, what do you want to bet that the way it'll work, if it happens, is that the Saudis will acquire nukes from the Pakistanis and then just on the QT pass one or two or three of them or more to ISIS and say, okay, there you go now, don't burn your fingers playing with nuclear fire. In other words, what we're talking about here is a setup for a false flag attack, one or more. Whether it will happen, I don't know. I'm just saying this is the way things are set up, and this one is virtually being set up in your face. If it happens, then it would be a case of ISIS carrying out a nuclear false flag attack, presumably against American cities, and which is another way of saying that the secret services of the United States, in league with nefarious factions in the Middle East, would conspire to attack the people of the United States, just as happened on 9/11, but on a smaller scale. 9/11 was very much an inside job. The alphabet soup agencies of the United States were involved, but so were the Israelis. The Mossad was in on 9/11 up to its eyeballs.
So what do you think this is all pointing to? What do you think the end result is going to be? Is this going to be the downfall of the United States, or is the United States trying to take over the world?
Well, I don't know, you see, because I'm not on the inside of those nefarious loops, and it could be. Well, I'm certain that there are multiple competing factions, even within the American system. You have the CIA at a certain level working against the NSA. You have factions within the Pentagon. You have inter-service military rivalries. You have a lot of compartmentalized programs where if you're on the inside of them, you know what's happening in the program. but you wouldn't know what's happening in other compartmentalized programs, which are off the books and massively so. They are funded with black budget funding. And in fact, my research and the research of others, Catherine Austin Fitz, Joseph Farrell, Richard Dolan, and other researchers have documented that there are literally multiple trillions of dollars missing from the United States government budget, especially from the Pentagon, but not only from the Pentagon. There are vast sums of money missing from other agencies as well in recent years, in the last 10 or 15 years. This has been documented. This is what can be documented from the public record, and if that can be documented from publicly available information, then the reality is quite likely to be even worse, perhaps far worse. And what that means is that all of these compartmentalized projects literally have train carloads of cold cash to bankroll their projects. And you may be asking, what are those projects? And the answer is because they're compartmentalized, they're classified, they're black budget, it's very difficult to say, except in broad outline. Clearly, one of those projects was to create this ISIS mercenary army from hell. That's obviously being done with black budget money. They sprang up out of the desert sands with weapons, vehicles, those, black drag glad rags that they wear, and funding to carry out their campaigns, to buy ammunition, and establish a political infrastructure such as it is. You don't do that, with a glass of lemonade and a cheese sandwich. That takes a lot of funding, billions and billions of dollars worth. And I just told you where that money came from, but through black projects. That's only one example that has been in the news. Now, in the case of my own research on underwater and underground bases and tunnels, it's very clear that a lot of money, a whole lot of it, has been lavished on those types of projects over the last, not just half century, but going back 70 years and even more. And then the whole UFO area is riddled with compartmentalized black budget projects. We could start with Area 51, White Sands Army Missile Range in south central New Mexico, and the Lockheed Skunk Works in California, and on and on. There are many facilities that the military-industrial espionage complex has. And the major government agencies such as NSA, of course the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, and others that we may not even know about, have been heavily involved with the UFO and ET question for decades, going back at least to the immediate post-World War II period, and the research indicates that even before that in previous years and decades. So there's been a long-standing, off-the-books, largely out of the public eye, research and investigatory effort devoted to these topics. And these are different layers of secrecy, and you might call them parallel realities. I'm guessing you may have interviewed Joseph Farrell. Is that correct?
Certainly.
And he speaks about this hidden civilization, or this parallel civilization, which certainly exists. My own research and experiences suggest there's not just one. There are multiple layers of secrecy, and while I've read a lot of what Joseph has written. I'm not sure he's specifically addressed what I'm about to relate, but what has been done with the technology of compartmentalization, or the techniques of compartmentalization, hermetically sealed operational compartments that have been developed by the military and espionage agencies in the United States and elsewhere in the world, and also by secret initiatic societies and organizations whose roots go back centuries and in some cases probably millennia. What they have done, and I might add that there is, to a certain degree, there is interpenetration between these secret societies, some of which are religious, but others are secular, and the espionage agencies. I'll give you one brief example, and other government agencies. On Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C., between the White House and the United States Congress, there is a United States Navy Freemason Lodge, which goes back virtually to the founding of the American Republic, to the days when the Washington Navy Yard was still a major Navy base. This was in the days of sailing ships. Today, the big submarines and the big seagoing warships can't come up the Potomac River to Washington, D.C. It's much too shallow there. But, a couple of 100 years ago, they certainly could and did. And so there you have, from the very beginning, a military lodge right in the middle of the capital of the United States. Another example is a direct interface between the United States Navy and the Freemason Initiatic Society. Another example, again from Washington, D.C., is the House of the Temple, which is a North American headquarters of the 33rd degree of Scottish Rite Freemasonry. It's about 1 mile due north of the White House in Washington, D.C., and has been there for many years, well over a century. That temple and 33rd degree Scottish Rite Freemasonry had quite a lot to do with the NASA manned space program, especially in the late 50s, running up through the 1960s and into the early 1970s. Buzz Aldrin, for example, was the second man to walk on the moon, according to the official NASA history. Was a 32nd degree Freemason. At that time. He may be 33rd now, I don't know. At any rate, he was then, and presumably still is, a very high-ranking Freemason. He took with him a Masonic flag or apron to the moon and conducted a short Masonic ceremony on the moon, brought that flag back to Earth with him.
How do we know this? How do we know this?
It's in the museum at the House of the Temple, just north of the White House in Washington.
And anyone has access to this, right?
Well, yes, they. I've been there twice, and you can.
Go on. I'm sorry.
Take a tour of the temple. They have very informative docents there, who will take you through. Very few people go there to take the tour. Most people don't even take an interest in Freemasonry. I'm not a Mason. I know a little bit about it, but I've never. I was invited, actually. The thing is, to become a Freemason, you have to be invited.
Right.
You can't go down to the nearest lodge or temple, knock on the door, and say, right, hi guys, I'd like to sign up. I want to be a Mason now. It doesn't work that way. You have to be invited to join by members in good standing.
Gotcha.
And I was. When I lived in Texas, there were two men I knew, and I liked them. They were good men. And they invited me to join one of the lodges there in Texas that goes back to the mid-19th century, I think. And I politely declined. I wasn't rude to them because I liked them. They were friends of mine. I didn't know they were Masons until they self-identified as Masons and asked me if I would like to join a fraternity and become a Mason, and I politely declined. But that's the way it works.
Okay, let me ask you a few questions here.
Yes.
Apparently you have a doctorate. What is your doctorate in?
I have a doctorate, and I have some other degrees. My doctorate is in political science.
From where?
And then I have two master's degrees.
Where's your doctorate from?
New Mexico.
Which university?
Well, the University of New Mexico.
And what did you write your dissertation on?
Well, my dissertation had to do, strangely enough, with discrimination in mortgage lending. And then, as it turned out, here in the 20th century, the banks began giving away home loan mortgages to anyone who walked in and said, I want a mortgage.
Yeah.
So while it was an issue in the last half of the 20th century, as we moved into this century, it became a non-issue. So that's the way the cookie crumbles, eh? It was at one time, mortgage discrimination really severely impacted minority racial and ethnic communities in the United States. But you know, the whole financial landscape has massively changed in the last 10 years. And so that's that. And I have 2 master's degrees. I have one in Latin American studies. And then I have the second one is in forestry and ecosystem management. And then I have a bachelor's in sociology.
Wow. So what are you doing in Ecuador?
Well, I came down here on a shamanic vision quest, Rob. Of course, let me tell you, in childhood, I read voraciously. In fact, I still read quite a lot. But in childhood, somehow I got my hands on 2 books that I read and reread. One had to do with the Inca Empire of the Andean region of South America. The other had to do with the Mayan culture of southern Mexico and northern Central America. And I read and reread those. So from an early age, I had a deep fascination with the Mayan culture and Inca culture. And then I went away and got a master's degree in Latin American studies with a concentration in Central American politics, and in the process of which I spent one summer in southern Mexico, smack dab in the middle of the Mayan culture area, exploring every Mayan ruin and pyramid that I could find and go to. So I scratched that itch in the late 80s, and then as I moved into this century, I for a long time had wanted to do a shamanic vision quest in South America, and I'd been thinking about it just for years and years. And finally, I hit the big 5-5, and I decided, what am I waiting for? The years are going by, one year after another, and I'm not pursuing this dream I've had for the longest time. Really, I guess you could almost say since childhood, since the age of 10 or 11. And so I went. I didn't have much money, but I went and I bought a plane ticket to Quito and said to myself, a round-trip ticket from Atlanta to Quito, and I said to myself, you know what? I don't have much money, but next year I might have even less, so I'd better go now while I can buy the plane ticket. So I did, intending to be here for 1 month. So I went to the Amazon, and I spent 10 days over there with one of the Quechua shamans and drank some ayahuasca and had some very eye-opening, or should we say inner vision opening experiences. And then I went over to the coast and spent another week and a half with a shaman over there, drinking some more ayahuasca, and had more experiences. And while over on the coast, I was walking on the beach one day in contemplation all by myself. There are a lot of deserted stretches of beach in Ecuador. And I suddenly had the thought, why go back? And you see, I hadn't come with the intention of remaining. That was something that was not in the plan at all.
So when was the last time you were back to the U.S.?
Well, the day I left.
That was it?
Which was November 1st, 2010.
So it seems that you have an axe to grind with the U.S. What is it? Why?
Well, it's more accurate to say, Rob, that the U.S. has an axe to grind with all of humanity.
Well, not everybody gets arrested at a Minuteman missile base during a protest with an Indian headdress on. So, it seems that you have an axe to grind, or that you just kind of fell out of being with the U.S.
When I was 3 years old.
Mm-hmm.
No, I would flip that around the other way again, Rob. It's the U.S. that has fallen out of being with virtually all of humanity.
Well, all of humanity isn't rising up against the U.S., saying that there's secret societies, saying that the U.S. the U.S. created ISIS. The U.S. was responsible for 9/11.
Rob, the ones who understand how the world works certainly are. The ones who are informed and knowledgeable certainly are. What did Edward Snowden do when he popped up out of nowhere in mid-2013?
He said, let's see, he created an act of treason. That's what he did. He broke the law. He broke the law. That's what he did.
No, he didn't.
He didn't.
What Edward Snowden did was reveal to the world just what I told you a minute ago. The United States is spying on all of you.
So, if you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear.
No, sir. Not at all.
Why?
That's a massive violation. That's a massive violation not only of the United States Constitution, but of international.
I don't care if the government watches me 7/24/365. I've got nothing to worry about.
Well, then you're mind controlled, Rob. Frankly.
Oh, I'm mind controlled because I am an honest citizen, and I don't break the law, and I live within my means. That's mind control?
No. When someone says, I don't mind if the government is spying on me 24/7, that's a different thing from saying, I mind my own business, I'm an honest guy, etc. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's good. But when you say that, then you're in George Orwell land, and you have drunk the Kool-Aid, and you have accepted your slave status.
Or is it possible that I live in a world of reality, and those who are up against the government are the ones who've drank the Kool-Aid?
No, sir. It's the other way around. Let me tell you something.
Sure.
Speaking of Kool-Aid, when I sometimes run into this with radio hosts because they have advertisers. They have to think about corporations.
Just imagine that, earning a living. Okay, go ahead.
In other words, there's always another finger in the picture. Shall we call it a hidden hand or a hidden participant in the discussion? I have no corporate ties. Right. I have no agency ties.
Neither do I.
What ayahuasca? The first thing major thing that ayahuasca showed me, which I already knew intellectually.
And now, just for our listeners, isn't that a hallucinogenic drink?
It's an entheogen. What you will discover when you broaden your connection with the natural world is that many other living beings are actually more conscious than the average human being. There are plants that are, in my estimation, hyperconscious, even cosmically conscious. And when you drink the juices of these plants, you will plug in sort of modem-like into a far larger realm of consciousness than most people can conceive of. That's why some people, when they drink ayahuasca, have what might be called a bad journey. And I'll go into that just a little bit.
Yeah, but correct me if I'm wrong here. Correct me if I'm wrong. No, hold on here.
Yes, sir.
Hold on here. But isn't ayahuasca also, doesn't it have the same effect, or sometimes doesn't it also include LSD and other hallucinogens?
No, it's not LSD at all.
It never contains it. Am I incorrect?
No, sir. No, sir. LSD is a chemically manufactured substance that was actually created by the CIA in the post-World War II period and flooded out into the popular culture in the 50s and into the 60s. And that's an entirely different program. Timothy Leary was a big part of that, and some other well-known big names. But ayahuasca, no, is not LSD. It does not contain LSD.
I'm sorry, DMT.
Yes. Now, DMT is a naturally occurring organic molecule that virtually all biological life forms carry within them.
Right.
And DMT is not LSD.
No, I'm sorry. That was my mistake.
DMT is a natural substance occurring in the human brain and in other organs in the human body. You have it in you right now, and so do I, and so does every single listener to this program. So do other biological organisms, including ayahuasca and the plants that are mixed with it to make the drink or brew that's popularly called ayahuasca. Now, what that does when you get a big slug of it from the brew of ayahuasca, what it does is merely give you access to a state of consciousness via DMT and closely biochemically related molecules that already exist in your body and have been there since the moment you took form in your mother's womb. So we're not, and it's interesting, the American government has criminalized DMT. If they catch you with it, you can be put actually in prison for years, notwithstanding that every human being has DMT in their brain. That's beyond bizarre.
Okay.
So I would say, no, it's not me that it's against the American government. I repeat, it's the American government that's against everyone, because if they criminalize DMT, and DMT is a molecule that your brain is constantly manufacturing, they have criminalized the natural process that your brain goes through. What does that tell you?
It tells me there's a lot of screwed up people in this world. Yeah.
It's beyond insane. It means that the United States government is afraid of the deepest biochemical processes inside the human brain.
Answer this question if you can. Just answer this question if you can. Are you allowed back into the States?
Well, see, that's the thing, isn't it? Because with these new...
No. Are you allowed back in the States?
Well, I'm trying to answer the question.
Well, that's a simple yes or no. That's a simple yes or no.
It's not. No, it's not.
It's not?
It's not a simple yes or no question.
Okay.
Because of the way the laws are written right now, it's not possible to know. We have a law called the NDAA, for example, which is a clause within the National Defense Authorization Act. It is something new.
Okay.
It has been adjudicated in the courts unsatisfactorily from the standpoint of all thinking beings who are concerned about human freedom and universal human rights. The NDAA provides for the executive, meaning there are three branches of government in the American system, in theory. That would be the executive branch, judicial branch, and legislative branch. Under the NDAA, the executive branch, in this case meaning the president and his deputies, may secretly determine that anyone, including American citizens, is an enemy of the state.
Okay.
I forget the legal terminology they use, but that's the effective meaning.
Right.
And that such person or persons may be secretly shanghaied anywhere in the world by the American military without public arrest, without public charge, without a public trial, and may be indefinitely, secretly detained incommunicado by the American military. In other words, may be disappeared without warning or notice to anyone, including the person who has disappeared. Now, that law is in flagrant violation, not only of the United States Constitution, but all the entire body of major international human rights law. And that is why I repeat to you, the United States government is at war with all of humanity. You might be on that list and you would never know.
Once again, you didn't answer my question.
Wait a minute. I am.
Well, do you want to get to it? Because we only have an hour.
I am getting into. I'm getting to it. And would you please be a little more respectful to your guest? You are insisting that I answer in a yes/no fashion.
Well, that's what I'm asking. A yes/no question. Are you
Rob, how can I know? The list is secret, man.
Well,
and it's not the only one.
Oh, come on. Do you live in a world of conspiracies?
Rob, I live in a world of fact.
Doesn't sound like it from this side of the mic.
Well, I'm wondering what time zone you're in, Rob, because I just explained to you the fact of the matter. There's no way to know if you're on the list, and it's not the only one.
Let's see. I have a passport. I go to the States. I go all over the world. I don't worry about being arrested. I don't worry about not being allowed into a country. If someone was to ask me if I was allowed entry into a certain country, that would be a simple yes or no.
That's because it's you. My thought process is deeper and more involved than yours.
I see. So, what
also,
is...
my life experience seems to be less superficial in that you ask me questions, but you have to understand a short question may have an involved answer. A short question could even have an answer that requires an entire book or series of books to adequately answer it, and even then, not adequately. And that's what I mean when I say the more you learn, the more you understand that there is to know, and the more you understand how complex it is. Reality is multi-layered, multifaceted, and do you know that the United States has its agents everywhere in the world, including in Canada, and that they kill many people and torture many people? I'm in Latin America, where lots of people have been tortured and killed by the CIA and the American military. Just a few blocks from where I am. Right now, there's a statue to 4 men who were killed in a CIA-sponsored coup here in Ecuador in years past. So you never know whether you're on one of the American killing lists or not. The business, I repeat, of the United States is war, and war involves destruction and killing. And if you don't get that, Rob, you've understood nothing.
I don't get it. I really don't. I don't buy the conspiracy theories. I don't buy the UFO conspiracies.
See, this is not conspiracy. This is not conspiracy. This is hard fact.
All right. Prove it to me. We've got a couple of minutes. We've got about 10 minutes left. Prove it to me.
What to you?
Prove to me that the United States...
the United States kills people?
That the United States is this country that is out to kill its own people, that it creates enemies in order for the war machine to go forward instead of the the peace process that everyone seems to want.
Everyone doesn't want it, especially not the United States government. Let me tell you this, Rob. There used to be free, independent Indian nations on the continent of North America. Shortly after the English-speaking colonies were founded on the east coast of North America, the killing of Native Americans began. We don't know how many millions of people the war machine of the United States killed, because as the country spread west across the continent, the American military was unleashed on native peoples, and they were slaughtered by no one knows. They weren't keeping count. They were just killing Indians. You know, that is historical fact. That's not a conspiracy.
That is true. I agree with that. I agree with you 100%.
Then the Kingdom of Hawaii, which was an independent kingdom, was taken over by military force after the American Civil War in the last part of the 19th century. And on it goes. All of this so-called free states of the United States were stolen from other people at gunpoint by military force. From the beginning, it had nothing to do with peace, freedom, democracy, human rights, liberty. It was born in blood and guts. And no sooner did they start killing Indians and running them off of their land in the name of democracy, whatever that meant, then the importation of millions of black slaves from Africa began, again at gunpoint, against their will, all to come to the land of freedom and democracy and human rights, to be worked as slaves. And that went on for a long time. In the Middle Passage of the Atlantic slave trade, no one knows how many millions died en route to the land of freedom and peace and democracy. Those who were sick en route were willy-nilly thrown overboard in mid-Atlantic to the sharks. I've read estimates that range anywhere between 6 and 20 million dead in transit crossing the Atlantic to the United States. So that's what happened.
Okay.
In the 18th and 19th centuries.
All right.
And then moving into the 20th century, there's been one war after another. By some counts, the United States has over 1,000 military bases, installations in over 150 nations and territories all over the world. The last reasonably good estimate that I saw said that American Special Forces, who basically operate under the black budget, we're in action in over 100 countries right now, carrying out missions that aren't publicly known for the most part. I repeat, the United States basically at this point, meaning its government and its military, the CIA and the NSA, are at war against humanity. And if you haven't wrapped your head around that, you've understood nothing.
Let me ask you a question. You're a very intelligent person. You are. Have you ever thought of taking what you know, running for Congress, running for Senate, being an active part of a solution that you seem so hell-bent to be part of, instead of doing it from the sidelines?
Why would I join the mafia, Rob?
So what you're saying is that you don't want to be part of the solution. You just rather keep...
No. You're putting words in my mouth.
Well,
That's
you're the one who
it.
doesn't want to take responsibility and be part of a governmental system that could actually make these changes.
I'm describing to you why I won't.
Okay.
It is a thoroughly corrupt, globally wicked mafia, Rob. It is a mafia. In fact, it is worse than the mafia. I'll give you an example why I say that.
Okay.
In World War II, it started in World War II or before, when the United States military went into Italy. Do you know how they invaded Italy?
No, that was before my time.
The OSS cut a deal with the Sicilian mafia. The OSS, after World War II, and they cooperated with them and worked with them. The mafia was their beachhead into southern Italy, and then they moved up the peninsula. That wedding, that marriage between the United States military and the intelligence services and the mafia persists to this day. The CIA is perhaps the largest narcotics trafficking organization in the world, along with the United States military. And it's been like that for basically the last half century or more. So when I say the United States is a mafia, I mean important agencies of the United States are involved globally in organized crime. It is a massive criminal syndicate. I wouldn't join the mafia. No sane person would.
Tell me, have you given up your American citizenship?
I would like to. It's not as easy as just saying, yes, I would like to. It's actually fairly involved. And for one thing, it involves some money that I don't have. You have to pay to do it. I don't have thousands of dollars that I don't have. So for me, it's a moot issue.
Wow. As you get older, and I hope you live a long and prosperous life.
Well, I'm 60 years old, Rob.
No, hold on here. Hold on. Do you intend on going back to the States? Wouldn't it be very simple for you to contact a lawyer, have a lawyer check to see if you actually could go back home? Do you miss home?
Rob, listen to me. I've been trying to explain to you. You don't know. You have such a superficial view of the world, where the world man works, man. You've interviewed 38.
Whoops. We lost him. I wonder where he went. He probably got picked up by some aliens, some extraterrestrials. Maybe the CIA got him. No, I cut him off. Man, this guy has got more bullshit than he has brains. He talks an intelligent game, but I've got to tell you something, X-Zone Nation. I just don't buy it. What is it with people who leave a country? You know, they leave a country and they backstab. You know, here he is in Ecuador. He's making all these claims. He takes, He likes taking some stuff that puts him into, what did he call it, Craig? Yeah, that psychedelic stuff he drank in the Amazon. Spiritual awareness is what he was getting at. The government of the United States and all the different agencies are out to get the world. And I'm the one who's dumbed down. I'm the one who doesn't get it. Well, I still say, if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. It's that plain, it's that simple. There's a lot of people out there who cannot grasp reality, that they create this world of conspiracies, secret societies, because in the real world, they can't face it. They can't exist in the real world. So they make up this imaginary world that they like to say is real. The Illuminati, the New World Order, the CIA is the biggest drug trafficker in the world with the American military. He doesn't know if he's allowed back into the States because there's these secret lists. He never did answer me, yes or no. All I like are yes or no answers, because you can spin a yarn very easily. And when he starts talking, all I hear is wah, 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 wah. You know that Charlie Brown person? That teacher on Charlie Brown? Wah, 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 wah. He's a legend in his own mind. He really is. I don't believe in the global conspiracy. I don't believe that the governments of the world are working with the extraterrestrials. I don't believe in all this crap, in all this made-up hoorah, because there is no proof. Show me an alien, dead or alive, I don't care. Show me a flying saucer, a whole one or in pieces, I don't care. There's more to this world than fantasy, late-night conspiracies. There's a lot of men and women in this world who have given their lives to fighting for the democratic way of life in the United States, Canada, Great Britain, and I think it's an insult to each and every veteran when these morons come on to any radio show and try to tell me and my listeners that it's the very own government that they are protecting, that they've lost their lives for, they've been injured, they are crippled, that caused this. It's an insult. It really is an insult. And to say these insults from another country because you're too damn, you don't have the ability to come back to your own country because you were afraid you're on a secret list? Come on, give me a break. It just goes to show you that sometimes the more education you have, the stupider you are. This guy was arrested in 2010 at a Minuteman III missile launch site near Minot Air Force Base, wearing a chieftain's hat of some sort with crystals. Hello? I'll bet you under the chief's hat there was also some aluminum foil. I want to believe, I really do, but I want proof. I want proof. What is so wrong about that? All I want is proof. There's a lot of conspiracy theories out there. There's a lot of if, ands, or buts. We can blame everyone for our shortfalls. But there comes a time in life when you have to take responsibility and say, hey, you know what? I screwed up. I made a mistake during this hour. I thought, for some reason, LSD was on my mind and it was DMT. Big deal. I made a mistake. I'm human. But I'll tell you something, Exo Nation. I sleep well at night knowing that there are men and women around this world in the 100 and some odd bases that he was talking about who are willing to give their life to protect me, my freedom, my way of life, and democracy. And for this moron to come on this show and basically backtalk these people and make a mockery of their ultimate sacrifice. He's better off in Ecuador than in the great United States of America. Hey, I'm a Canadian, but I'll tell you something. I love America. I love the United States of America. I love my friends there. And when somebody attacks the United States of America, my neighbor, they attack me. I'll be back tomorrow night as once again we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And we come to you Monday through Friday starting at 8 p.m. Eastern right here on the Starcom Radio Network. Wow, it's been one of those nights, Exo Nation. And I look forward to tomorrow night. Once again, joining each and every one of you here in the X Zone. And who knows what tomorrow will bring. Until then, Exo Nation, always remember to keep your eyes to the sky and your heart to the light. From everyone here to everyone out there and the great beyond, my name is Rob McConnell. Have a great evening.